400 logins, so about 1,200 people watching us already, with about 10 minutes to go before we start. But just to tell people that, in fact, we're doing an informal chat in the run-up to the panel, which begins at exactly 7 o'clock. And we've got some amazing people on the panel with us this evening. We have Beryl Lutrin, whose camera is off, and I hope we'll turn her on. I see we've got Milton, her husband, that we've mistakenly brought onto the panel as well, who we're busy watching eating on his bed. So I hope there are not too many cries in bed tonight. Milton, we'll put you back into the audience shortly. But Beryl, turn on your camera and let's have a word with you as well. Hello, Dan. Welcome.
Hello, Howie. Hello, panel. Hello, audience. How's everybody doing?
Good, thanks.
Fantastic. We're hoping that we can get Claudia and Beryl to turn on their cameras as well, and Corinne. While people do that, we were talking a few minutes ago about Richard Lane's business called iLearn, and iLearn are in fact sponsoring tonight's program. So Rich, I've just pulled up your website. You can probably see it on the screen in front of you, although you look like you're on your phone, so maybe
But you could get another live share.
in the front of you. So Meryl, you're not on mute. Cool. So on iLearn, Rich, I just want to look at some of these courses that we can access. So there's like marketing and Microsoft Office and human resources and diversity and finance and sales. So like, how long is a standard course?
Howie, firstly, thanks for the punt. Much appreciated. The courses are, so there's like 700 courses in every business skill topic you can think of. And the course duration of each ranges anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes, and has been designed in a style which is called micro-learning, which is more appropriate.
Sorry, Rich, we're struggling to hear you, Rich. Can you turn off your earpods, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better, thanks.
Cool. So I was just saying the courses have been designed specifically for most of our new modern short attention spans, and are much shorter, between 10 and 20 minutes, and you have a huge library and choice.
So how much will a course cost me? Let us say I want to go on to the course on semicolons and quotation marks.
So the unique offering that we are providing is that we don't charge per course. It's a once-off fee for 12 months for 2,500 Rand, and you get access to all the courses upfront for a period of 12 months.
That's amazing. So just run us through that pricing again. How much for full subscription?
It's 2,495 to be exact.
2,495, and you have unlimited budget or unlimited number of courses you can actually do.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And the course content, is it local or international?
It's a combination of both. The courses are sourced from local, American, and British accents, but the topics are universal. So anything in and around business and IT skills is covered.
That's absolutely amazing. And I see we joined as well by Corinne Ossendriver. Corinne, welcome. Nice to have you on the panel. Just to tell people that Corinne's husband and I spend an inordinate amount of time together, because every Friday morning, Ilan, who runs a business called Tour Soweto, and I, together with Ricky Lyons, go door to door in the Melrose North area for our TAN, collecting food, and we collect approximately a ton of food a week from the residents of Melrose North. And then Ilan goes through on a Friday and takes through sandwiches and bread and rolls. We feed about 150 kids every single day in the Kliptown area for lunch. And then the whole neighborhood descends on my home on a Sunday, and we pack meal kits, a kit that would be enough for a family for a month, and we then distribute them on Sunday in the Kliptown area. And we've fed probably about 145 families with month-long packs food so far over the last few weeks that we've been doing it. So Corinne, it's nice to see the other half of the family.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's amazing work you're doing in Kliptown and life-saving work. Really highly appreciate it.
Tell us what you do while your husband and I are running around collecting food.
I'm putting out fires at Jewish Interactive. We do apps, and we've been extremely busy since lockdown because so many of the children are now learning online. So we've had to redo most of our product offering to suit the current lockdown times. So I'll be talking about what we're doing.
That's fantastic. You're in what, 60 countries around the world?
60 countries, over 500 schools, over 300 shuls.
That's absolutely
amazing. And supplementary schools, yeah.
So we're definitely looking forward to hearing from you. And Beryl Lutran joins us as well. Beryl, let's unmute you for a second. We mistakenly brought Milton, your husband, onto the screen a little earlier, and we watched him eating chips in your bed. So Beryl, unmute yourselves quickly.
You're eating.
He was eating in bed. So if there are crumbs in bed, you know he has been caught on camera.
That's very embarrassing. Can you hear me? Is my audio on?
Your audio is on. And Beryl, you are actually probably the best-selling author in South Africa. Is that true?
I think so. Because, I have a school book, so I have a very large audience.
So how many books have you in fact written?
I've written 2 and I've published 11.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And I think Dan is busy putting some of those on the screen. Dan, if you allow me to share my screen rather than you sharing your screen for a second, I have all of those books actually in one image that I'd love to show people. But
I thought, Howie, I thought maybe they were all on your bookshelf behind you there.
Oh, they definitely all on the bookshelf. So Beryl, you do English and Afrikaans and isiZulu and accounting and maths and science. It's unbelievable.
I've written Afrikaans and English, and I've published the other books, but I read every word. And if it's not simple enough, I make the authors rewrite so that if I need to understand, if I don't understand, then the pupil definitely can't.
Now, you also have been unbelievably generous, and you've made a remarkable offer to the Jewish Report tonight. Now we're up to about 1,600 people busy watching us at this moment. Tell that audience what offer you've actually made to us.
Well, you usually showcase a charity. I'm not sure who it's going to be tonight.
So tonight we're actually showcasing the Jewish Report as the big charity. I can tell you, for example, that Saturday night a week ago, where we did a few charities, we did Africa Awake, and we did one of the cans, and we did Yad Aron and the Jewish Report. We collected 239,000 Rand for charity in that one broadcast.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm very happy to say that anyone who orders any one of my books, they can choose any one of them, and they donate 1,000 Rand to the Jewish Report. I'm very happy to say that I'll donate one of my books, any of my books, whichever one they choose, free of charge, to anyone who donates 1,000 Rand to the Jewish Report.
That's absolutely amazing, Beryl. Thank you so much. So anyone tonight who's giving 1,000 Rand or more to the Jewish Report, we will add in one of Beryl's books, a book of your choice. And that's an unbelievably generous offer. Beryl, thank you so much. And the time is about 3 or 4 minutes to 7 o'clock. And we've currently got just shy of about 2,000 people logged in to Zoom. And Dan, have you checked how we're doing on YouTube?
Checking now.
And I still think
we have 100 logins on YouTube, so probably 200 to 300 people watching on YouTube now. So welcome to all of you. Sean, what was that? Sorry?
I'm missing Claudia. If you could find her.
I've just found Claudia. So I'm Claudia, to be precise, rather than Claudia.
Howie,
yes, Reza.
Howie, while you're waiting for Claudia,
I just want to make specific mention to Beryl that if it wasn't for her standard 4 Afrikaans teaching, I don't think I would have matriculated.
Thanks, Richard. I remember you very, very fondly. You were quite naughty. You had spunk even then.
Nothing's changed.
Okay, lovely to see you. And I'd also like to just say, during this time that we're not on yet, Nikki Bush, you are my hero. I've read your book, Future Proof Your Child, and I listen to you on 702 whenever I have the chance. And I just think you're amazing. You're the voice of reason. I wish I could meet you in person one day.
You have met me, Beryl. You've met me. I see you at all the SAJR fairs and education fairs. We have met.
I'm making you a public offer here. Please write the Parents' Handbook and Study Guide.
Oh, thank you. Are you going to publish it?
Yes.
Oh, right. Done.
Done. That's what we do on these panels. Isn't that fantastic?
That's so kind of you. Thank you, Beryl. And yes, my children wouldn't have passed school without both of your handbooks.
Thank you.
So welcome as well, Michi Lessus. Michi, I think you're on lockdown a few hundred meters away from me, near Colette Drive, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So close, but so far. Yeah.
So very far. How are you surviving lockdown?
Yeah, well, it's really good to see so many familiar faces on the panel. And it's been really busy because we've been working with hundreds of schools around the country and hundreds of educators, helping them make the shift to remote and distance learning. So from our side, it's been a really very interesting learnings, interesting observations, and I'm excited for the discussion this evening because there's a lot we've seen a lot in terms of the shift and the role of technology in the shift. So it's an exciting topic to be part of. So thank you.
Michi, in a minute or two before we go live, how, I mean, a lot of the people on the panel are either graduates or involved in private schools, but there are a lot of schools who are government schools where kids don't have bandwidth, don't have connectivity, don't have devices. How are they coping during this period?
So unfortunately, a pandemic really, really highlights the inequality in a system. And what we're seeing is we work with government and private schools. We're seeing this divide being bigger and bigger and bigger. And what we're doing is we're working with the schools on two things. One is the basic needs of food and childcare, and also catch-up plans within the government sector and the rural sector. So I think that is one of the things about shifting after the pandemic is I hope it brings about a more equitable education system.
Amazing. So we're going to go live in approximately 1 minute. And we just want to welcome everyone on. We've got about 800 people or logins on Zoom. That's about 2,400 odd people. We've got another few hundred on YouTube. So we've got it's like almost a school assembly where we've gathered an awful lot of schools together in one place. Sean, you're going to be running tonight's panel that we're going to go live in an hour. You wear many hats and many responsibilities. You have kids at school, you've got kids at university, you sit on the Jewish Board of Education, you're trying to run a business, Vitality, around the world. You must be exhausted.
No, Howie, I'm actually inspired. I'm inspired by everyone on the screen about what they're doing. So I'm inspired and energized and excited for the conversation.
Good, fantastic. So the last person we're just going to touch base with before we start is Claudia. Claudia, let's unmute you for a second.
Hi, Howie.
Hi, nice to see you in person. And how's the little one?
A handful. Work is a holiday.
I think that's many parents' greatest fantasy is now just to go back to work.
Totally. I've never been so excited. I'm missing my office. I'm pining.
Nikki, you will enjoy the story, and this is the last story I'll tell before we join in. But one of our first panels we did was a medical panel, and the second one a psychology panel. And a parent actually communicated with us, an ex-South African living in Canada. And she said for 15 minutes a day, she goes and she hides in her cupboard because that is the only place that her kids can't find her. And she says if she goes into her bedroom and closes the door, they just bang on the door. But if she hides in the cupboard, they just don't think to look there. And she just desperately needs those 15 minutes every day.
Okay, Howie, should we get going?
I think, Sean, we should definitely get going. So on behalf of the Jewish Report, I just want to welcome everyone this evening. We've got a really huge group of people watching us. We've got about 2,500 people watching us on Zoom. We've got many more hundreds busy watching us on YouTube tonight. So we're probably close to 3,000 people who've logged in already to watch us. And I think there is no topic probably more pertinent and more important than discussing the future of education at this point in time. Sean has put together an unbelievable panel of experts tonight. And we're going to be hearing from everyone. We're going to do special segments on university, and Sean Adam Habib is going to be joining us a little later to talk about universities. We're going to hear about what people are doing with apps and on digital, and we're going to be looking, Britt is going to be talking about recruiting tutors. And there's so many people, both in formal and informal education, who are going to be joining us. I think we have a stunning and really informative evening ahead of us. But we cannot forget that these panels are brought to us by the Jewish Report. I'm non-executive chairman of the Jewish Report. Sean sits on the board and is one of the directors of the Jewish Report. And we took a decision at the start of lockdown. And the one decision was to continue to publish when everyone else was stopping to publish. And so we're distributing thousands and thousands of copies of the Jewish Report to Diskems and Checkers and Pick and Pays and to people's apartment blocks and to townhouse complex, because we understand the importance of community during a time of crisis. And this, even though it was not economically feasible to do it, we decided to go ahead with publishing. And the second decision that we took was really to create this platform. And over the last 6-7 weeks since we've been running now, this is our 18th panel, as I said, since we've been running these, we've had the most remarkable response. Some panels have been watched by more than 20,000 people. And we've touched on so many parts. We've touched on education, information, and entertainment. Saturday night, we ran The Bachelor. We've run cooking shows on this panel. But most importantly, we've tried to kickstart the South African economy, a panel where Tito Mboweni tried to gate crash and log in, and he just couldn't get in because Zoom was too full. We've brought in young entrepreneurs, and we've brought in people. How do you access the UIF funds and the Oppenheimer funds? And we've tried to give practical advice to people, lifestyle advice, exercise, nutrition. And all of this is brought to you for free by the South African Jewish Report. And it is really important that everyone watching, whether you're one of our 55,000 readers who watched, or literally the probably 60, 70, 80,000 people who've watched our Zoom panel, we want to tell you that we're doing this, and Dan Stillerman, who makes all the wheels go by, he tweaks all the buttons, he oils all the connections, he makes sure that everything happens. Dan doesn't get a salary, I don't get a salary, Sean doesn't get a salary, no one on this panel gets paid. But we do ask you for one thing. We ask you that you help the Jewish Report continue to publish during these important times. That you help in that distribution, and that you help to make sure that these panels happen just by giving us whatever you're comfortable with. And this evening, Beryl Lutran, who is the best-selling publisher and author in South Africa when it comes to education books, says, you give 1,000 Rand or more to the Jewish Report, she's going to throw in one of her books, a book of your choice, just to encourage you and to thank you for helping make a donation through to the Jewish Report. So for every donation, 1,000 Rand or more, Beryl has kindly offered to put in one of her educational books. And I want to just ask Dan, not only just a huge thank you to Dan, whose life I hijacked about 2 months ago, and he'll probably never get it back again. I just want to ask Dan if he will just show a very quick video of the Jewish Report.
Hi, I'm Howard Sackstein, chairman of the South African Jewish Report. And we at the Jewish Report believe that Jewish organizations would be made or broken by how they serve their community during this impossibly difficult time. Our first decision was to continue to publish and to deliver newspapers not just to shops, but to people's townhouses and apartment blocks as well. Because feeling part of a community is one of the greatest services we could ever deliver to the Jews of South Africa. Our second decision was to create a platform for information, education and entertainment for the entire Jewish community and for South Africa as a whole. Over the past few weeks, we have created Zoom panels that have attracted tens of thousands of viewers. Some of the best healthcare specialists in South Africa gave practical advice on how to stay safe during Corona. Psychologists taught people how to stay sane, and wellness experts made sure that our minds and bodies were kept fit and healthy. One of the things we are most proud of is how we have highlighted the work done by so many Jews and Jewish organizations in feeding the needy and producing masks for both our own community as well as the townships. But now we at the Jewish Report face our own challenges to survive as advertising dries up. And so we are appealing to you. If you are one of our 55,000 readers, or if you are amongst the tens of thousands of people who have enjoyed our Zoom panels, now we at the Jewish Report are asking for your support. Please give generously to us so we can continue to publish and continue to serve you in this remarkable fashion.
So thank you, Dan. Those are the banking details, the Zapper and the e-wallet of the Jewish Report. So please, we ask you to give generously. You would have heard that, in fact, Beryl Lutrin is going to throw in for any donation above 1,000 Rand. She's going to throw in one of her books. And tonight we're joined by Richard Rain, who's one of our panelists, who is here from iLearn.course. And I see Richard has an offer as well. He didn't want to punt his own business. He just wanted to come in and help us in this because he's involved in education and he wanted to be part of this process to help us. But Rich, I can't help but giving a punt to the amazing work that, in fact, you do at iLearn. You told us a little earlier that, in fact, it's a once-off subscription that you give. How much is a subscription? And you have access to literally hundreds and hundreds of courses.
Yes, thanks, Howie. We've got an enormous range of over 700 courses in business skills and IT for, I think, a very low fee, which is 2,495 Rand, which will give you 12 months access to all of those courses. And I'm just so inspired by the work that you're doing and keeping the Jewish community with the Jewish Report informed, that I'd also like to make the offer that anybody who makes a donation to the Jewish Report for the equivalent value of our subscription of 2,500 Rand, we'll give that person a subscription to our courses too.
Well, Rich, that's absolutely amazing. So if you donate 2,500 Rand tonight to the Jewish Report, you are going to get, in addition to Beryl's book, you're also going to get 2,499 Rands worth of courses from iLearn. Richard, thank you so much. That's absolutely, absolutely amazing. So Dan, if I could just ask you for 1 second, if you could just share the banking details of the Jewish Report again. If you are going to make a donation, please just give us a reference and a way that we can contact you so we can make sure that, in fact, Richard's course is provided through to you and Beryl's books are provided through to you. And we're going to just leave that up for another 10 seconds. If you have your phone with you, take a picture, grab the bank details, and Dan has already put both the wallet doc as well as the banking details into the chat section. So with that, I've done my pitch for the evening. A huge thank you to everyone. And I'd like to introduce you to the man who's made this panel possible, the remarkable Sean Mattison. Sean, thank you for putting this all together. I think it's going to be a stunning panel. Both Dan and I are going to fade into the background, and we're going to take with us, we're going to take Beryl, and we're going to take Brittany with us, and who else? And Corinne with us into the background as we do as well. And we'll see you a little later on in the panel. Thank you all so much.
Right. Thank you, Howie, and thank you everyone for joining us. Just before we get going, just to let you know that unfortunately Professor Mwala, who we advertised, unfortunately for personal reasons could not make it. He was extremely generous in his time in wanting to join us, but we are lucky enough to have Adam Habib join us later on in the evening. So we will have a bit of a discussion about universities in about 45 minutes time. So if you do have questions, please post them on the Q&A. We'd like to make this as interactive as possible, but I'd like to start the conversation really just taking a sense of where we are. We've been at home, our kids have been at home for 6 or 7 weeks, and we've really seen this remarkable transition in education. So I wanted to start perhaps with you, Rabbi Kasif, if you could give us your thoughts of what you've learned over the last 6 or 7 weeks as far as education is concerned.
Sean, and thank you so much for the opportunity. To keep it short, because there's many things that we've learned. One's realized over a very quick time, with necessity playing its role, how teachers have managed to do a tremendous amount of change, moving from the classroom to online. It's tremendous what they've done in such a short period of time. We've learned so many lessons about students as well. Students and their independence to be able to learn and learn independently. We've watched introverted students who were introverted in the classroom come to the fore in this methodology of learning. It's from all around the world to a huge population, and as this teaching continues, classrooms are welcoming in people from every sphere of life and profession into their classrooms. I suppose one of the problems that we've also realized is just how people think that school or online school is going to replicate, so that the visible surface of a classroom somehow going to just be replicated online, as opposed to the invisible processes that underlie what taking place in a classroom. And that shift is still taking place for everybody. Just a few points, I'm sure the other panelists are going to add on.
So, I mean, building on to that, Andrew, you're dealing with high school students, got issues of matric coming up and all the anxiety that brings. Sense of what's happening in the high school classroom and what you've seen from the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Sean, and good evening, everyone. Echoing a little bit of what Rabbi Kasif has just said, what has been remarkable is the fact that we're not a distance learning institution. You know, we operate from a beautiful campus in the heart of Victory Park. We're in the business of face-to-face, intensely personal, relationship-based education. We're a small high school at Victory Park, and one of our trademarks is that we invest heavily in one-on-one relationships with the children, and part of the success of the educational offering is based on those very intense personal relationships with the children. So the shift was a dramatic one for us. Being in a high school, we were fortunate. We're dealing with an age group of students who we encouraged to become increasingly independent in their academic engagement. So they really rose to the occasion, they took the challenge, and they made the shift remarkably quickly and unbelievably effectively. And then, of course, the other critical part of that equation, you need to consider that I have a staff of over 40 teachers, ranging between teachers who are in their mid-20s through to some who are post-retirement age. And that entire staff, over a matter of days, shifted. We're using Microsoft Teams as our primary platform, but they shifted 100% to an online platform in a matter of days, which was remarkable. We were designing a curriculum that we had never thought we'd have to design in our lives. We were never trained to do it, but by doing a bit of research and working collaboratively, we got it together. And the thing that has just blown me away is how quickly and successfully the students and the staff members have made the shift to an online-based educational or online modality of education.
Andrew, thank you. Just to remind everyone, please do post your questions on the Q&A between Howie, Dan, and myself. We'll try and get to as many questions as possible. So please do use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. But if we could just build on that, Alison, you know, it's on the one hand, I do agree everyone's made the remarkable transition from a technology perspective, and the speed of the change has been extraordinary. But it's a different modality of education. You know, how do we overcome the missing link of the teacher in the classroom, that deep learning? Are we okay being taught online, or are our kids okay? Sorry.
I mean, it's certainly the word is shift, isn't it? And I think we need to be clear to understand that there are also many teachers who've been ready for this, and they're loving it. And I think that within our teams, we're seeing some reorganization happening between the professionals, where some of the champions of technology are partnering with deep educationalists that have been at it a long time. So together with that innovation, we've got the depth of insight into how children learn and how to mediate learning happening. And those groupings, I think, are happening organically or even intentionally in the schools as we make the change. And that's very exciting. My sense as an educator is that this has been a time when we've absolutely had to fall back on our values as a community. They are without doubt the anchor and the bedrock while we are failing and flailing and being thrashed around with so much uncertainty and so much change at one time. And if we return to the values in education, I think that is almost entirely a duty of care to the children that are in our charge. We're able to solve the problems. If we're motivated and we're driven and we're coming from that place, we'll work out the pedagogy. We're delighted to trim some of the curriculum, but don't tell the minister. And we can focus on what we're really setting about to do, and that is to mediate in a social context with children. And I think the role of the teacher, if anything, has been amplified, and perhaps that's why they're working so hard. They're trying to curate curriculum on the fly and materials, but the teachers, the diehard teacher is really seeking for innovative ways to connect with his students or his students at this time. And I think if we fall back to that, to relationship, we'll find the technology, we'll work the pedagogy, and we'll access the child. So that culture of care, I think, is pervasive in our organizations, and it's what will see us through whatever's ahead.
Okay, great. So Claudia, you've been at this for a while. So you've been online and teaching online, and you've built an extraordinary business. So maybe 2 points. On the one hand, you've been extremely generous and offered a scholarship to anyone who's willing, who needs it. So just tell us a little bit about what you want to offer to the audience. And then it would be very interesting to hear from your experience, what's happening out there as far as online learning is concerned.
Thanks, Sean. I actually would like to just present a little bit. I think people get more value from the visuals than seeing my face. Is that okay? Can I quickly present?
Yes, of course. Just tell us about what you're going to offer, if you don't mind, for
yes,
1 second.
So I'm going to show that now as well.
Oh, apologies.
Okay. Perfect. So just to introduce myself, I am the CEO of Top Dog Education, and we are sponsoring a student a full year's worth of free tuition worth 60,000 Rand. If you're interested, please provide your email address in the chat, and the Jewish Report will select the winner. And then we will be in touch with you about execution and getting you online with all your teachers that will teach you and tutor you or your child throughout the year. So what I would like to just talk about is the fact that we are a global online learning provider with over 3.5 million learners in over 50 countries. We specialize in personalized education, and that's why our students are recognized for being top performers worldwide. So in 4 minutes, I'm going to quickly show you how this pandemic can actually be the best opportunity your kids have ever seen. I get asked all the time to mentor students, and so I thought, let me just tell you a little bit about myself for inspiration about what can be done during lockdown in this pandemic. When I was just 5 years old, the school that I was at didn't want to progress me to grade 1 because I couldn't cut straight. And I still can't cut straight. But my father, he didn't want to hear anything of it and basically put me into grade 1. I was not a performer. In fact, I was always that child throughout primary school, and I got very anxious about school and believed that I just was not an academic. In high school, I graduated top of my class and went on to study actuarial science. So what was the turning point? A father who refused to have an underwhelming child coming from a family of rocket scientists. So he spent evenings with me, taking me through my work, creating a practical material that was relevant to me in a personalized way. On the other hand, I had a mother whose main concern was my social and emotional intelligence. So my grades started picking up, and that feeling of success became addictive. My goals were not only to perform well, but I wanted to be the best. And I had a new sense of confidence and purpose. So true to my parents and going against the grade, I was told to never start a presentation with a graph, but the very first thing I'm going to do is start a presentation with a graph. This graph might look boring, but it's the reason I get excited and get up in the morning. It doesn't mean anything. In fact, it's fake data. But if we got data like this, we'd be very happy because we would say there's clearly a trend going on. All students are similar. And the fact that there's one outlier, it's fine. It's not a problem. Just delete that student measurement error. And how do I know it's a measurement error? Well, it's messing up my data. One of the first things we teach people in stats is how do we eliminate outliers so that we can find the line of best fit, which is fantastic. I'm trying to find out the average amount of sugar a person can consume. But if I'm interested in true potential, we would be creating a cult for average. If I ask a question, how fast can a child learn to read in a classroom? Scientists will change that to say, how fast does the average child learn how to read in a classroom? If we study what is merely average, we will remain merely average. So instead of deleting these outliers, we study them. This is what teaching looks like in a non-personalized manner. The red line represents where the teacher would pitch the classroom at, leaving many well above it, which means that they've mastered the content and they're not being challenged enough. Many fall below it, in fact, most do, meaning they don't perhaps have the prerequisite skills or knowledge to understand the lesson that is given to them. Traditional teaching approaches are set for the average learner, and our goal is to provide an intelligent system that makes it possible for an educator or parent to teach individuals and not classes. So not only moving people above the average, but to move the entire average up. What we found is that it's not reality that shapes learning, but the lens through which your brain views information that shapes your reality. We can change the lens through promoting social and emotional intelligence in every class that is taught. So now is the chance as parents during lockdown to expose your children to all the skills that will set them up for life. What's been found is that only 25% of success is predicted by IQ. 75% of your success is predicted by your perception, your optimism levels, your social support, and ability to see stress as a challenge instead of a threat. The absence of failing is not success. If you have the right perception, performance improves immediately across the board. TopDog and Cambridge Learn achieve results through driving positive perception, self-regulation, and confidence in our students. I often get questions from parents sending their kids to the best schools in all the countries around the world with the best teachers, and they say, but why is my child still not doing well, either from an emotional or an academic standpoint? But embedded in that question is the key to understanding the science of learning. What that question assumes is that our external learning environment is predictive of our academic success, when in reality, 15% of your long-term academic success is determined by your external environment. 85% is determined by the way your brain processes information. So individualized learning with parent and mentor involvement are the two biggest factors that contribute to this. So now I pose the question to parents. I want you to reprocess this. Is lockdown pausing education or is it elevating it?
Claudia, thank you very much. And I mean, there's a number of themes we'll come back to over the course of the evening, but clearly the one critical issue is the psychological, the self-esteem, the emotional components. And Meryl, you dealing with adolescents through this time, what are they going through? What's normal? And how do you get those positive psychological dimensions that Claudia was talking about?
Okay, so hi everybody, and thanks for having me on the panel. And I've also got a lot of comments to make because I might come across slightly different, with a slightly different opinion to Claudia, but with some ideas that are quite similar as well. I just want to say that I don't think there's a one size fits all for students. Like there's no one size fits all for anything in the world, realistically. There's no answer for any one person on anything, okay? So I just want to say that I think distance learning and online learning is very different from online schooling. I think what our schools are trying to do is do an online schooling and trying to recreate it. So it's getting our teachers working exceptionally hard to recreate it and find new ways. And I think that everybody's going to find a different way, that different styles of learning are going to work better for them. So I've had children who've said to me, or students who've said to me, Meryl, you're not going to believe this is me, but I'm telling you, I want to go back to school. I can't do it like this. Whereas I've had students who I thought would be so keen to, be back at school have said to me, oh, I'm just loving the online schooling. And I wouldn't have been able to predict which was which, to be honest, because I think it's really not as, we don't have enough research yet to predict how it's going to be. And I think that school is actually just way more about than pure academics. I think there's a lot that goes on at school that some students absolutely need. It's about identity, it's about culture, it's about socialization, it's about structure, safety, it's about being challenged, it's about having anxiety, learning to manage it, it's about belonging, it's about connection. For some students, that doesn't work and they don't like it and they don't enjoy it. And the pressure is difficult for them. So again, I'm just going to keep saying, there's no one size fits all. And I think that what's happening and what it's done for all of us in this online learning is to challenge all of us to think a bit differently, but not to say that schooling, active schooling doesn't work. So I think for me, what's also been interesting is that many students, although they fight against it, have begun to recognize the value of schooling, and they really are really keen to get back to school. So lockdown in itself has caused many, many social, psychological, and emotional strains on everybody, not only on our students, but on parents, economic strain. And realistically, this is also impacting on us physiologically. It's not only just, it's not that we're just feeling it. We actually manifest it in our bodies. Our sleep's becoming impacted. Our immunity's become impacted. Our endocrine systems. This is a very weird space that we're all living in. And I think that the best way and the most effective way, I believe, to help us all deal with that is to deal with the feelings it's generating for all of us. And that brings us to a whole lot of difficulties, because we all say that we want our kids to talk about how they feel. There's a lot of information out there about how important it is to talk about feelings. And it's the buzzword, talk about feelings. But when our students, our children, parents, I'm with you on this, it's so difficult, because when they start talking about the feelings, we want to shut them down because it's too painful for us to hold on to those feelings. And realistically, our students are going through a lot of loss. They really are going through a fortune of losses. And what happens when they do talk about it or mention it, for example, maybe, will we have a matric dance? Won't we have a matric dance? We get a whole lot of people out there who will say, first world problems. Don't talk about that. You've got a roof over your head. You've got food to eat. It's not important. Now, many of our students, and especially I think Andrew might agree with me, is our students in our high school know all of that, but they're entitled to express their grief, the pain. This was their time. I was supposed to be in the school play, etc. And when they're holding on to all of these feelings and they don't have a way to express it, I believe it impacts on their work. Some of them become lethargic. They need to go through these feelings to talk it out so that they can get to the positives. And you can hold both. You can be sad, you can be in pain, but you can also be positive. I can see that the schooling system is going to work for me right now. So for me, we're all living in limbo. Limbo is the worst grief to live with. There's many of the theorists talk about limbo as one of the worst losses, and that is because it's like torture. You're living with not knowing. Are we going back to school? When will we go back to school? How will we go back to school? When am I going to see my friends? When will I be able to go to a party? Will I have the matric dance? Will we have the rugby season? Will we have netball? It's really scary and very hard to live with. So yes.
Can I stop you a little bit there just to, I think those are very important points, and I maybe want to move a little bit to Mishi, to the, you're at the cutting edge of technology. So how do we use technology, not just to fulfill the delivery of content, but to actually deal with some of these issues at education and in the school environment over and above the pure delivery of content?
Sean, I think that's a really good comment and question, because what we've seen through the shift towards technology is a continuum of the use of technology in distance learning. And a lot of schools, it's been a knee-jerk reaction that the more content I give to families, the better they'll learn, and it will be better for them in terms of distance learning. And I think Meryl's really right, because this isn't a learning experiment. We're in a pandemic. It's contextual. We're going to, when we all go back to school, we're going to have a different kind of teacher. We're going to have a different kind of curriculum. We're going to have a different kind of child. And so I think what we need to know is look at technology for an enabler of three things. And I think one is content, one is communication, and one is creativity and collaboration. Four things. You can see I wasn't, my maths wasn't that great. So, but I think, and it's really important. And what we've seen as an EdTech company, we've been looking at for the education sector has been one of the slowest sectors to embrace technology because, for a lot of reasons. And we've been amazed at the shift of switching on that technology. But I think what we've seen is schools who've been embracing it, and as Alison was saying, who've championed this for a long time, they're using it meaningfully. So, and that's where the continuum is. The meaningful use of technology for engagement, for social connection, for balance, and for realizing that this isn't, we're not judging whether this is better than school. We're using this as a stopgap in a global crisis. And we're using this to judge a way forward. And to schools that are really using this integrated and meaningfully. And I think what's also very interesting is over the last few years, we've always talked about embracing our children with 21st century skills. But now what we really are needing to look at is post-COVID-19 skills for post-COVID-19 world. And I think that's really important. And I think we can't underestimate the skills that our children are learning within this environment of technology. And I mean, I've read one, the rules of screen time, and Nikki's a better person to talk about this, but the rules of screen time have gone out of the window. The social media, this online safety, another huge thing that children have to learn now is fake news, the absolute how to manage fake news. And so I think technology as an enabler is huge for connection, for content, for creativity, and for collaboration, and not just for pushing content.
Mishi, thanks. Nikki, that's exactly where I was going to go. I've sat as a parent in your lectures about the dangers of technology and what we have to do to prepare our kids. And now we're all asking for more screen time. How do we put exactly Mishi's challenge together with what's happening in our homes on a daily basis? Sorry, Nikki, you're on mute.
I should know these things, seeing as I do this all day. Right, I think I'd like to pick up on the fact that what we're seeing right now is crisis schooling. We are nowhere near perfecting virtual schooling, distance learning. This is an experiment right now, and as Mishi said, it's a stopgap measure. Some schools were more prepared for it than others. Some parents were more flexible in their heads than others. But I have presented at so many education conferences and conventions over the past, it's probably the last 10 years since my first book, Future Proof Your Child, was launched. And we've been talking to teachers about technology. Disruption is coming in education. Technology is going to be a massive factor. You're no longer the sage on the stage, you're the guide alongside. We have to reinvent what education means, not just replicate it using a different medium. And I think that that is now coming home to roost, that schools who were further down the line have perhaps developed some teachers who are good at turning real world content into online content. It's a very specific skill set. Not every teacher has the skills right now to do that. So there's a lot of hard work going in on trying to replicate what we do on a normal day in a homeschooling situation. But and I see Hugo Mendes is actually on this call as well, and he's involved in the Homeschooling Association. Many people are mistakenly saying we're doing homeschooling. We're not. One of the biggest things that I have to get across, messages that I have to get across to parents, is that you're not your child's teacher. You are the guide alongside. You're there as a helping hand, as a conduit. Unfortunately, if you've got very young children who are in the preschool and foundation phase, those are multisensory learners. Your foundational skills have to be acquired in a meaningful way, and human beings are still multisensory. From about grade 6, 7 upwards, going into online learning is not difficult. That's the easy part. But what do we do with our children from 18 months of age? Or even, I mean, children are going into preschools from like 12 weeks of age. From 12 weeks of age through to about 9, 10 years of age, we still need to find a solution for multisensory learning. Going back to what you said, Sean, about how much screen time. I mean, the rule of thumb right now, I reckon parents are doubling or tripling the amount of screen time in terms of gaming and TV time, just to keep children occupied while they get their work done. And we know that when children are in front of a screen, they sit still, they don't make a mess, and they don't ask for their parents. That does not mean that their emotional cup is filled. In fact, it doesn't matter how much children are on devices. Their emotional cup will never be filled by a device. A device is not fulfilling the heart. It is a piece of technology that helps give access. It's a conduit, and it can provide an experience, but it certainly doesn't make me feel loved. It might make me feel engaged, but not loved. So my biggest challenge at the moment is running parent support programs for schools, as well as for major corporates, the banks, the JSE, companies, big employers who have sent all their employees home to work with 2 days notice. I mean, literally no dress rehearsal. If a company seriously wants to send their workforce home to work virtually, they do a 3 to 6 month experiment, which gives them time to iron out the crinkles and the wrinkles, and they get to know who's in their team and what the challenges are in each home. And right now, I think we are at great risk, and I want to pick up what Meryl said. We are dealing with not just children who are going through grief and loss, but an entire adult population, an entire country, an entire world who are all processing grief and loss in different ways at different stages, because that's how grief works. It's not linear. And all of this is running interference in the learning process, in the adjustment and transition process. And I think this has not been taken into account by schools per se, and definitely not by employers, which is why I recently wrote a white paper called Keep Your Business Running, how to mitigate one of the biggest risk factors in business today, which is the parent who's working from home and looking after children. you get your work, you've got to get your work done like any entrepreneur who has built a business from home. You've got to get your deep work done when your kids are asleep, early in the morning before they wake up, late at night before they go to sleep, and then pray that you can actually get a little bit of work done in between while you're supervising your children.
Nikki, thanks. We've got a huge amount to cover. So Alison, I know you want to say something, but I do want to ask Ricky if he can just, because there's a lot of questions coming in about pre-primary and primary schools, and this point, you know, kids below grade 7, how effective are they doing in this world? And what are you learning? I know you're talking to parents and getting a lot of survey data. What are you learning from what's happening out there?
Thanks, Sean, and good evening to everybody. Thanks to the Jewish Report for this fantastic forum. It's been a fascinating journey, Sean, I must tell you. I think we're all learning on the fly, and the key word is being adaptable. The schools have to be adaptable. The parents are adapting. It's a huge shift. There's this amazing partnership happening between teachers and parents because neither can do it alone. The parents have to be those facilitators, like Nikki said, but at the same time, the teachers are working day and night. It's been unbelievable. And I think that is the challenge. The primary school age is very complex because you're dealing with such a vast range of basic tech ability. A grade 1's ability to sit in front of a screen and operate and work on a learner management system like Microsoft Teams is complicated. You can't do that without a parent. And then you've got a grade 7 who is very independent. So we're catering for all these ages. You've correctly highlighted the issue in the pre-primary schools. Pre-primary school teachers are working really hard and they're adapting and they're trying everything that they can, but they're dealing with an audience that unfortunately is not able to learn efficiently on that platform. And a lot of content's going out and teachers are reaching out and doing work and adapting, and even personal learning, private Zoom, WhatsApp calls, using any platform they can to access the children. But like Nikki said and Alison said, these children need tactile, they need to learn, they need to be in contact with someone, they need to be engaged personally. So it's been a very big challenge in the pre-primary schools. I do believe that the primary schools have adapted phenomenally well. I'm speaking obviously from a King David point of view, but I know that many schools have in the ability to engage the kids, to put brilliant content across and develop their skills. When we were developing our program, Sean, I don't know how much time I have, but when we were developing our program, we understood that there was a very important balance that had to be reached between what we believe to be educational imperatives and community needs. Those educational imperatives were things along like, now that we're going online, what do we teach? What subjects do we prioritize when we're planning our curriculum now? What do we give our focus towards? How much screen time should kids be spending? Things along those lines were our main educational framework we wanted to develop. But we also cognizant that many homes don't have unlimited devices. They don't have unlimited Wi-Fi. Parents are working from home. How do you create a balance that educates the child effectively, but at the same time doesn't compromise the home environment and increase the stress levels? So at King David, what we did was we tried to create some form of hybrid and that would allow for flexibility where we focus on our primary educational objectives, like I mentioned, but at the same time gave homes an ability to be flexible. So it was a combination of preloaded material, pre-recorded lessons, and live lessons. But we understood the need that we have to be adaptable because we've never done this before. And we just kind of dived head in. And soon thereafter, we did a couple of surveys to almost gauge where we're being effective. How do we need to change to meet our family needs? I do have some of that data here for you, which I'm happy to share, if I may. So can you see my screen now, Sean? Has it come up?
Yes, it has.
So let me just run through these briefly for you. It's a high level. There was obviously a lot of specific King David internal learning that took place, which I'm not sharing those results. But this is very interesting. When we put out the question to our primary and our pre-primary schools, would your child benefit from more live lessons? So it's fascinating to see you can see the disparity. Our primary school parents were desperate for more live lessons, 70% requesting more. Our pre-primary school, 71% requested to keep it as it is. They were very happy with the product, or they felt that live lessons weren't appropriate for their kids because of reasons which I'll share with you shortly. That's a fascinating learning that we had, and we had to adapt on that basis to increase the amount of live lessons. When we were asked how many lessons are good for you, what works for you in your environment. So you can see almost this broad range, some parents wanting way more, some parents wanting 1 a day, some wanting 2 a day. At King David, we adopted the middle approach to increase to 2 live lessons per day. Also realizing, like that was mentioned before, that the students crave the interaction with their teacher, and parents don't always know how to facilitate. So we also have a system in play where teachers are online for 2 hours a day for private consultation if need be, where a child who's struggling or a parent who's struggling can reach out and have a private lesson, which, by the way, Sean, is I believe to be one of the future benefits that COVID has thrust upon us, is the ability to focus now and almost hone in on specific children who need that independent guidance. And this might be a benefit from COVID in the future. Another interesting slide is those parents who didn't want more live lessons. Some were very happy with our initial offering and they said they were happy. Why didn't they want it? So you'll notice the big percentages there. Scheduling difficulties at home. Many parents, 23, 24%, saying that it's difficult to manage the whole family on devices, and a live lesson creates extra pressure at the home. Sometimes there's pressure on the child because your child now needs to drop what they're doing, be at the computer. There's a rush in the home. They have to be focused online, and creates pressure. And you'll see as well an interesting statistic, 15% don't have enough devices at home. And this is something all schools are going to have to adapt to. How do we move into this new reality, helping cater for our parents by providing more devices or channels for them to get more devices? In the pre-primary school, it was similar. Too much pressure on the child, the live lessons, a lot of children not responding to live lessons very well. They find the computer not personal, it's not close, it's missing the heart, like Nikki said. This was an interesting stat for I think all schools and all parents. How much time are our kids spending online? So we tried at our primary school level, based on our research, to limit it to 2 hours a day if we could of online time. But you'll see it very much depends on the child, depends on the learner and the home. But it seems like we are getting almost in the right zone. Most parents spending between 1 and 3 hours a day online. So there's been a huge amount of learning for us, Sean, and we still actually are continuing, still learning on the fly, hoping to improve our offering. And I think all schools have to be willing to adapt. We can't be, have our blinkers on, because this is a moving target. But it's been fascinating learning from us. Yeah.
Ricky, great. Alison, I know you wanted to add something to the conversation.
Just very briefly, picking up on that multisensory experience and the social interaction, we're really aware that our children are getting a sense of connecting in the screen format like we're doing now. So they're seeing people, they interacting, they're engaging, but there's no sensory somatic feedback. They have a dissonance because while they've been with people, they haven't. And I think it's getting catchphrases like Zoom fatigue and all that kind of phenomenon, but it's that response we have as a human being to simply being in the presence of another and engaging a shared purpose. And I think our children are really missing that. And it's the one key role that we can work in partnership with the parents. As Ricky said, this has really amplified the partnership between school and parent. It's forced it where it wasn't happening, and it's been deeply enriching where it is, so that we can together be the village, in the educational process, and take the learnings that we're getting and to take them very seriously into our future planning, whether we're in crisis mode or not. So there's some wonderful opportunities for us to embrace. But at the end of the day, we're a human body who works on feedback in our social processes. And we need to think about that with the kids. More time online doesn't satisfy that need. They need the just right time to make connection, and they need the just right time to do their work and to be guided within their curriculum expectation.
Alison, thank you. We've been joined by Professor Adam Habib. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. It was extremely short notice, and we really are gracious for you giving us of your time. We've been talking a lot about schools, high school, primary school, pre-primary, challenges of being online, social issues. Be very interested to hear your perspective on what's happening at a university. Maybe 2 questions specifically. What's happening in the universities in this online world, and what do our high school kids and matriculants, what should they be thinking about given all of this uncertainty as they prepare for university?
So firstly, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here, and I've been sitting into the conversation for the last 15 minutes. So, I've listened to what people are saying, and in a sense, the conversation is not very different as it's playing out in the universities from what I've just heard now. There's a lot of angst happening. What is quite amazing is, look, the universities like WITS have been experimenting with online education for at least 4 or 5 years now. But that has, in a real sense, simply involved about 15% of our academic base. What's happened in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks is we've got shifted almost 100% online in a matter of weeks. And as you can imagine at WITS, there was long debates about why online is not the appropriate mechanism, why I shall not do it. There was a whole series of people who refused to participate online. And then when this happened, everybody went online within weeks, and they learned on their own. We had an orientation program. We had a couple of virtual lessons from our learning and teaching department, and a whole series of really fairly elderly academics mainly decided to go back to the class and experiment and learn how to do online teaching. Now, I do want to say what we don't have, and I think somebody said it earlier on, what we don't have is online, or at the moment, we don't have online teaching. Our academic programs are not configured for online. What we've effectively got is emergency remote learning on an online platform. What we've done is we've taken what our academic program or our curriculum structured for the classroom, we've adapted it slightly, and we've put it on an online format. That's all we've done for now. And I think that that's important to understand. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second, there was enormous opposition to us going online, largely by certain student leaders, but also by some academics. And the argument from these student leaders and academics was that not everybody has access to devices and not everybody has access to connectivity. And so some people are going to get left behind. Our research had shown that about 85% of our students had devices. And so in a sense, the position that I and my colleagues took was that social justice does not mean going to the lowest common denominator. What it means is being conscious of inequality and assisting those who do not have access to provide them with a helping hand so that they can also participate. So in that regard, what we did is we proceeded to explore how many people didn't have online devices. We found that it's about between 3,500 to 5,000. We bought 5,000 laptops. We created a computer loan scheme. We entered a partnership with the post office and delivered that within 48 hours to every student that didn't have it. We then followed that up with negotiating with all 4 telcos, 30 gigabytes of data, and provided each of our students with 30 gigabytes, 10 gigabytes at any time, 20 gigabytes in the evenings. And then all lectures were effectively recorded and put in the learning management system. So as you did a lecture through Microsoft Teams, it automatically got recorded and was downloaded on the learning management system, which meant that you could pick it up at any point. And so very quickly, we shifted dramatically into an emergency remote learning. We've been now 4 weeks in that program. Of that 4 weeks, our estimates are that we have 86% participation rates. Now, on average, we probably get a 70% attendance rate in our classroom. So the fact that we've got an 86% participation rate is phenomenal. The real question we have to figure out is what is the qualitative learning process? And it's too early to say. We're going to have to look and see what happens through the assessment processes. We're going to have to be able to judge it. I can tell you in this 3 weeks, we are quite astonished at how well our students took to it, but more importantly, how well our academics took to it. We anticipated far more problems than we've had, and we've actually been astonished at how well it's gone. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. And it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be serious issues of angst that are playing out. But it does mean that in some form or the other, the online format is here to stay. And I think that that's something that we've got to come to terms with. I don't think we're going to ever go back to the learning process that is solely the classroom. I don't think we're ever going to be in a process where simply our education is simply online. Because as somebody said, universities like schools are far more about simply academic learning. They're about how you create citizenship. They're about identity, about how you create a cohesive community. All of those things are as much about the university. And so what I think and what I'm imagining is going to happen as we go forward is we're going to go towards a blended learning. I can almost imagine that when we come back, all of our programs are going to be partially based online, partially based on face-to-face, and we're going to navigate between these. I don't think we'll have big classes anymore. If we have classes of 500 and 600, I think we're going to shift them online and then ensure that the face-to-face interaction is more applied, is more tutorial format, it's more group learning in an applied sense. So I think the old world in higher education is gone, whether we like it or not. And the new world is yet to be born. And I think we're going to be going through some really hard birth pangs in the coming 24 to 36 months. And I think that it's going to be an experimental process. Let me say two other things which I think are important. I think it's incredibly important to say that at the top end of our our higher education system, the WITS's, UCT, Stellenbosch's, UPs, UJs, etc. I think we're doing an online learning that is equivalent to anything you're getting in Beijing, London, or New York. I think where we are different is we are doing this in the midst of very deep inequalities. So one of the things that most universities don't have to worry about is how to procure devices and make sure you cut a deal with the post office so that you can send them to students. They don't have to worry about negotiating 30 gigabytes of data and harassing the CEOs and debating with them, how can you charge us this price? Where's your commitment to the country? And haranguing them to come to better price rates. Universities don't have to do that in many other parts of the world. They don't have to have a debate with our student leadership about the fact that some students are living in a shanty town with 12 or 15 people in a room. And so however good your device and however good your connectivity, you can't learn. And so we are attempting this in a very, very distinctive social environment. And in that sense, I think there's an innovation playing out here that is just not playing out anywhere else in the world, partly because of necessity rather than because of our own skill sets. And I think that that's playing out with WITS, with UCT, with many other places. And the question that we need to say is, how can we take these lessons to the rest of the world? How could they learn from these experiences so that their impoverished communities may be smaller, but they're also not excluded out of the online learning process? And I think that that's important. Finally, you asked about students in schools and what does it mean? I will say three things. The first is they should apply, and the application processes are happening as per normal. We are processing these. We will be coming back to students quite quickly. What's worth noting is we're probably going to have to adapt some of the learning process. So if students are applying for medical programs and we do the NBT, well, we're not going to get the NBT immediately done. And so there's going to be some delays when the NBTs are held, etc. But we are already working on it as a system. So that's the first thing, apply. The second thing to be aware of is that next year, we're probably going to make it mandatory for everybody to have a computer. We're not going to, if we're going to go to a blended learning format, then we're going to have to make sure that everybody has a device. Those people who can afford it should purchase a device. Those people who can't afford it, we're probably going to continue the loan scheme so that we get them a device. But the whole learning process, at least a part of it, is going to shift online. And that in a blended learning format. My DVC academic says that we're probably going to work towards, at least in the first year, 25% of the entire academic program should be online. And we need to learn and teach our students and academics to navigate between online learning and face-to-face learning and blending the two in useful ways. And the third, we are very aware that the university is far more than simply learning in the classroom. In fact, the research shows that if you want to be a great success in your profession, you learn more from outside the classroom than you learn internally to the classroom. One of the reasons that South African professionals are so highly rated around the world is not because of what they learn in the classroom. That they could learn in other places around the world. It's they've had to navigate a complex university community across race, across class, across politics, across ideological divides. And they've had to grapple with that. And when they learn to grapple with that, they learn a whole series of soft skills that come to benefit them when they're in the workplace and when they have to navigate the kinds of leadership challenges you navigate in a cosmopolitan institution. And that South Africa does, and South African universities do, I would love to say by design, but almost guaranteed it's by default rather than by design. So when students march on the Vice Chancellor's office, or when Fees Must Fall plays out, this is by any student, whether you're participating or not, you've got to navigate those challenges. When you navigate those challenges, you're learning a whole series of skill sets. So when you land up in a workplace and there's a strike, you're not completely puzzled by it. You've learned how to navigate that complex world. And it seems to me that that will continue. And we're very cognizant of it, we're very aware of it, and we're almost certain that that's what we will return to going forward. Perhaps I should say one final thing. I know, I promise you I'll shut up at this point. You probably want to know how we're thinking through the academic year. We're almost certain that this week, we started online 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, we started and brought in medical students in the final year. In the coming weeks, we're going to bring back in a phased return students that are postgraduate students, students that are in disciplines that require face-to-face learning, so fine arts, and students that are in laboratory-based disciplines. And we're going to do that over a 4 to 6 week process. We'll also bring back students into the residences who live in environments which don't lend themselves to learning. So we'll use social justice to return students to, so they might still do online, but they'll do it from the university residence. But we're almost certain that until July, we will not have all of our students back. We probably will be operating on 30 to 40% of our students back. Now, the big question is, will we return with all of our students for the second semester at the end of July? We would hope to do so. But some of the projections that our infectious disease specialists are saying. They're saying the epicenter, the height of the peak of this infection is going to be August, September. And if there's going to be a hard lockdown in that period, or at least a lockdown that demands we have a social distancing, then we might only return with a full cohort of students in the classroom in October. And if that happens, you can almost be guaranteed that we'll start looking at running 2 cohorts of students, finishing some of our students at the end of December, early January, and finishing a second cohort of students sometime in February. So we probably will start thinking about starting later next year. Normally we start in the first week of February, anticipate the last week of February or the first week of March. That's how we're imagining this. But it's a moving target because it really depends on how the pandemic is evolving and how we're going to have to adapt to that. I'll stop there.
Prof, thank you. And I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety trying to get through all the multitude of issues at the limited time, and there's lots to talk about. We are going to bring some of our panelists back on, but there's one important question I'd like us to deal with, and that's the question of fees and payment. From a school perspective, I know the CEO of SAJR, Lebogang Montanya, was quoted in the press saying you have a legal obligation to pay fees. Rabbi Kasif, maybe if you can give your view on the issue of payment of fees and how people should think about it and how you're thinking about it.
Sure, thanks for the tough questions. So you're right, Lebogang did make that comment in the press, and it is certainly the view that's been expressed by the Independent Schools Association over the past few weeks. The reason for that is because teaching is continuing across all the schools, certainly the schools that we're referring to here, where online remote learning is taking place, albeit, as we've heard, a very different form of teaching. But there's a quality online product where teachers are making sure that in the core skills at every level, students are kept up to speed in learning. And the other element is that all these parents across all communities want to return back to schools that have not been broken through the process of COVID, but rather supported all the way through. And that's critically important. All the schools, I must say, however, are certainly aware of the difficulties that lockdown has brought to families financially. And I can certainly speak from us, from King David, but certainly from all schools that I'm hearing and interacting with, is that there's a growing level of non-payment from parents because they are battling. And so schools are putting out solutions that allow parents to pay either deferred over a period of time. We know that that's going to have a huge cash flow implication for schools, but parents will pay over a period of time, and vehicles are being set up so as to assist parents through those difficult periods. Maybe just to touch on one complicated issue, because I think Nikki and Meryl referred to this as a period of luminal period and limbo and grief and loss, which leads to many different responses. Some are anxiety, some are anger, and schools are being pushed about what about reduced costs that everyone would have. You know, you're not paying utilities as much, you're not paying as much on printing, and or some of those variable items. And what's critically important is that schools are having to change what has been accepted budgets into something very different for the reason of COVID. Never have schools had to worry about thousands of liters of sanitizer and protective gear and masks to supply and cleaning on a different level in between. Once we get back, which maybe we'll talk about later in the session, there's going to be so many needs that had never been considered or contemplated before. And so while every school is freezing whatever expenditure they can due to this difficulty of parents to be able to pay and knowing that it'll only happen over an extended period of time, we have to be aware that we have to help as many people as possible through this period. And for us to understand that this is beyond a transaction level of I'm paying for this and I want this product. As all the speakers have spoken about, we're in a different reality. And so this is about looking after communal schools, community schools that are set up for specific purposes that no one wants to break during these time periods, but wants to ensure they come through ready in the same quality, retaining its people, its quality of people that they've developed over many years for the benefit of children into the future.
Rabbi, thank you. Alison, I'm interested in your perspective on some of the fee issues that you're experiencing. And Dan and Howie, if we could promote some of the other panelists back, we can get to them in a moment. Alison?
We have certainly appealed to our parents to continue their obligation to school fees. We don't have an interruption to actual delivery of the teaching and learning from a service point of view. But to echo what Craig Case have said, it would be a travesty if we have a change in our environment back to community-based campus engagement and the school is not there or not functional in any way, whether it's reduced staffing or change of environment. So, but in the partnership that I spoke of earlier, I believe that the partnership between the school and the parent includes the contractual agreement to make payments towards the fees. We have found our parents to be extraordinary in how they've rallied as a community to protect this. We certainly have had a number of parents who've been absolutely stunned with how the floor has just been pulled out of their income stream, and it's really very difficult for them. So on a case-by-case basis, we keep again that relationship open to talk about their needs, be it timetabling or be it around managing their obligation towards fees, and try to reach solutions that ensure that the safety of the school as far as the continuity perspective goes.
Alison, thank you. That's a very difficult issue. And I want to move on maybe to uplift the discussion and just talk to a few of our other panelists. Beryl, you've written or distributed thousands of books which are in homes all over the country and to many people listening. How do people take advantage of your tools and supplement them in this blended learning environment that we've all been talking about?
Okay, thank you. I had a prepared speech, which I now feel I'm just going to be short and sweet and say that I'm not trying to sell my books. Most of the audience, you have my books. Use them, open them, look at the contents page and see that most of what you're learning online is actually in the books. After your lessons, go to my books, the books, and revise and reinforce whatever you've learned. For the older student, you're well able to go through the books on your own, and in that way you can upskill yourself. And when you get back to school, you'll be in a different, stronger position. For the parents of younger children who want to help their kids, the parents often say to me, I was good at English and Afrikaans, but I've forgotten everything. Everything's changed. I don't know where to start. And I can honestly say to parents, look at the books, you'll see everything will come back to you, and you'll be able to sit with your kids and go through their lessons with them. Whatever they've done in class, find it in the books and go through it with them. And in this way, you are able to constructively help them. And the older students, seriously, systematically go through the study guides. It's all there. And when you get back to school, you'll find that you are honestly in a stronger position than you were before lockdown. And I just want to say, stay well, stay safe, happy learning and happy teaching to all of you.
Beryl, thank you. Corinne, and it's a point that we've spoken a lot about learning in a very academic sense, but it's very important that we think about all the aspects, and particularly for our Jewish Report readers, of learning holistically. You have a series of assets that are available online for Jewish enrichment. Tell us a little bit about what you've got available.
Okay, thanks Sean, thanks for having me here. And Beryl, I have to say my daughter passed matric because of your Afrikaans book. So she came from Israel at age 12 and had to learn Afrikaans, and it was only through your book and my getting up with her every morning going through your book that she actually passed matric. And so thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. And well done to you and your daughter.
So I want to talk about what we do at Jewish Interactive. We're a non-profit. I'm going to share my screen because I think it'll be more valuable to be able to see what we do. So at Jewish Interactive, we're a non-profit that believes in joyful Jewish learning. And our main audience, the target age of the children is primary school from age 5 till about 11. And we have a platform. Our main platform is SAJR Tap, which is a portal. It's the Netflix of Jewish games, Jewish and Hebrew games. And on this platform, we have about 12,000 games that are generated by both our team and by teachers and parents and children worldwide. So in SAJR Tap, we have a wide range of Jewish topics, as you can see, from teaching Hebrew, teaching Jewish ethics, the Aleph Bet. We've got this wonderful series that will come in useful next week for Yom Yerushalayim, with finding all the lions in Jerusalem, integrating videos and maps of Jerusalem, and a wide range of topics and games that have been created. It's all free for children, for you to assign to your children. And it incorporates also a creation platform where you can go in. I can show, we normally have workshops of 2 hours, so to show you just on one foot, we have this creation tool where you as a teacher or the children, because of course the deepest learning is when the children create the subjects themselves. So we have this platform where we provide creation packs on every topic that elementary school children would need in their Jewish or Hebrew classes. We've got the whole story of creation and all the parshiot. And it's a tool. So today was Lag BaOmer, so they can go in and create their own games very easily, and just choosing backgrounds and stickers and create the story of Rabbi Akiva, and then they can create and make interactions so that their learning becomes alive. And they can easily make puzzles and soundboards out of these series of slides. So that is SAJR Tap on one foot. But at the beginning of March, when schools started closing down, we were approached by many teachers and parents throughout the world. The parents just felt so overwhelmed by getting so much content. From the schools, from Zoom, from WhatsApp groups, from the internet. And they asked us if we could just create something curated. There are 12,000 games. Where do they even start with their Jewish education? So we started a whole series called SAJR Bites with the aim of creating a topic a day that would be aimed at young children, that they can work for an hour without too much parental supervision. So for example, so these were all the games. We started just before Pesach because that's when lockdown started. So these were topics that we created per day. And then we went on, last week was Yom HaTzmaut, so it was all the Israel topics. like Omer was today, and tomorrow we'll be adding all our Shavuot content. So to give you an example, like for Omer, it's the same structure for every bite. It's divided into watching a video.
This is extraordinary content, and I'm just, I feel terribly cutting you off in the midst of a daily learning promotion. Very, very conscious of time, and I want to give everyone a chance. It's extraordinary content. Maybe if you can post some of the links on the chat, and we'll also publish it in some of the follow-up material.
I gave Dan all the content, all the links to the content.
Wonderful.
So basically, this is free. Please go and use it. Go and give it to your children, and to let them just find out what joyful Jewish learning is.
Wonderful. Just to build on that, Britt, very briefly, I know you helping to put together a network of people, of tutors. Just give us a quick insight into some of the work that you're doing.
Hi, so thank you so much for having me thank you. And so basically Juta, we're a company of tutors as well as teachers. And we've been running since 2017. And basically we've realized that since students have been learning at home, there's kind of been a struggle that the parent can't be a teacher and the parent at the same time, and they need a third party to kind of step in and help explain the work or an extra bit of information and stuff like that. And so what we've now done is we've now gone online onto Zoom and to Microsoft Teams, and we're doing all ages. So from preschool to university, we have extra lessons going, and you can do them basically in a group, in individual. We've also come to see that we need, people want once-off lessons. They don't want weekly lessons. It's one topic, one lesson, and that's it. And that's kind of where we step in, as we will have one lesson and that would be it. And Dan's sharing our website now. And so basically, if anyone would need a tutor, they would come to us and we would personally connect them with a tutor or a teacher that fits their needs specifically. So everything is personal based. And we also, if people would like to sign up to be tutors, or if they're teachers and they want to do extra lessons, they're more than welcome to visit us on this website, get in touch with us, and so we can help students succeed to their fully.
Wonderful. I mean, I think that really is an inspiring testament of some of the creativity and opportunity that's come from this unique set of circumstances. I know Richard has spoken a little bit about iLearn before. You know, he's been extremely generous to sponsor this evening. His details we will circulate, generously giving us a bit more of his time, and said we're not going to go back there. So Richard, we really do appreciate everything you've done. We have got limited time left, and I just really wanted to go around and just understand what happens from here. The Prof has been very clear on what could happen at WITS, and there's a whole lot of uncertainty. What could happen from here? So Andrew, what could happen for our high school kids over the months ahead, and what should they be thinking about?
Thanks, Sean. So for us, obviously, our top priority is our matric students. We need to get them in for certain blocks of time. We've referred to a hybrid or a blended system going forward. Prof. Habib referred to that in the university context. We're looking at something very similar. We do need certain chunks of one-on-one contact with the students going forward. There are certain summative assessment tasks for their school-based assessment that we have to get them under controlled conditions back onto the campus. So going forward, we're looking at it as a blended system with online continuing. There are going to be certain students between grade 8 and grade 12 who will not be able to return to the campus, and they need to be able to continue online. The junior high school, we feel, don't need a 5-day week. They could get by with 3 days of contact possibly in the week, and the in-between lessons continuing as online days. We're looking at that. But really our 11s and 12s are our big priority for getting some time back onto the campus in small groups, tutorial-based sessions, small group sessions to supplement what will continue as an online thread. But definitely we're looking at having some contact time, hopefully soon. The fear is that, as Professor Habib alluded to, we could see ourselves going back within a couple of months to a full lockdown situation again. So hopefully we have a window now where we can get some time on the campus with the senior students, some quality time to really do what we need to, but the online program will continue throughout.
Ricky, can I ask you a similar question as far as the primary school is concerned? And certainly we're very concerned about younger kids in the early grades with those formative learning to read and write. What do the next few months hold for those parents and children?
So Sean, I think, obviously the outstanding question is, what is government going to decide? I think we are to some extent really bound by many of their decisions and how their decisions affect independent schools. Our hope is that there will be some slow return to school. I agree with Andrew that we're not giving up on blended right now. And I must actually put a lot of the parents at ease and the community at ease. We are meeting our educational objectives over here, even with our younger students. Of course, the partnership needs to continue, and we still need parent assistance at home to facilitate the learning, but educational objectives are being met, and we haven't given up on those. So everyone can be relaxed. Our experts do know what we're doing, and we really do feel that we've got a good handle on the content. For me, the big concern is the emotional one. Our kids are yearning for contact with people, and for me, that's the biggest tragedy of all of this, and which we hope for, that really our kids will return to our campuses to interact with their peers, to interact with their teachers, because that's really what we're missing. Educationally, we are strong, we are good, and I do hope for some kind of hybrid moving forward where there'll be some form of either staggering of different grades coming. But again, we're not giving up on the online. We've made a lot of progress in that regard. There'll be a lot of children who will not be able to return due to family circumstances. Maybe there may be immunocompromised family members at home. So we can't give up on the online. And to shift it in the more positive direction, I think there's been so much fantastic learning now during this phase. We can't actually give up on it. There's huge opportunities that this presents to schools. And I think when the dust settles, we'll all be able to kind of filter in what we've learned and how we can leverage that moving forward. This online world just opens up so many new avenues to our children, exposure to experts, individualized learning for certain students who may need it. I think really we've got to unpack what this is bringing to us. So even when we fully back, please God, one day soon, to a full school program, which I think we all really hope for, I don't believe that online can replace what you get in a bricks and mortar school. I think that, but when we do return, don't expect to see the end of this blended model, because there'll be a lot that schools can leverage for the benefit of the families and for our students. But I do hope to see my kids back in my school. I'm sure we all do, all the principals out there, because that's what they need, and that's where they learn the most, not just in the books, but from the interaction with their peers and their teachers.
Great. So maybe just to wrap up, I mean, we could go on for hours, but maybe just to start with you, Mishi, just some of your thoughts about how we can reimagine education based on what we've all kind of experienced in this rapid transition over the last few weeks.
Yeah, so I think being in education technology for the last 20 years, it is fascinating to now see everyone acknowledging how technology is this huge enabler, and to see how it's so I think I agree with everyone. There is no ways we can go back to education the way it was before COVID-19. And I think we need to look at a short-term solution, which is the catch-up. And then we need to look at a medium-term solution, which is the transition. And then we need to look at the long-term solution, which how does this fundamentally change the way we educate our students for post-COVID world. And I think a lot of people on the panel are from private schools, but we really have to acknowledge that it has to give us opportunity to a more equitable system. And we need to really look at how technology, and I think the things we've seen that are really amazing and we need to take cognizance of is the fact that it's beyond the classroom, the global connection, technology as an enabler, the role of the educator, and also the power that children have when they're digitally connected. And I think we need to make sure that we create the partnerships to apply that to the children across the country and our youth across the country. So I think the opportunity once we, there won't, I think to go back to we will never go back, and education won't be the same. And I think it'll be exciting to create those partnerships to move forward for a post-COVID system of education that prepares our children and that is more equitable. So thank you, everyone.
Claudia, just to ask you, you've really had tremendous experience in the online world, and we hear from everyone we'll be in this blended learning environment, certainly for the rest of the year, and I think in a different way as we reimagine education into the future. But there's a lot of questions about how do people stay motivated online? Kids are gaming and all sorts of other things. In your experience in this new world, how do we keep our kids engaged and inspired and attached to education in a blended world?
Right, so, you know, Sean, there's no silver bullet. At the end of the day, all kids are individuals, they're all different. But what I can say is that in the right type of environment that is built to support kids in a virtual way, then, you know, it's a lot easier to create the social element, to ensure there's nurturing at both the teacher, parent, and student level, and it becomes a community. And there's also very practical things that parents can do. I mean, we've got lessons for parents on how to set up firewalls to only allow them to have access at certain times in the day. And, you know, once you've got that discipline and routine, it might be hard in the beginning. But one thing that life presents is that whatever seems extraordinary, eventually, with time, with practice, with you know, the continuity and perseverance, will land up becoming ordinary. And anyone can become successful and take the positive out of what we're going through right now.
Wonderful. Meryl, what we've had, and I apologize for cutting you off partly, but so I've had a lot of questions here. Just to complete some of those thoughts from a psychological perspective, it's going to be a difficult few months as we work our way through the crisis and get back to normal. What advice have you got for parents and adolescents to build on Claudia's point, to turn this into something positive and to turn this into a growth experience? Sorry, Meryl, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Actually, what you're asking me is like, honestly, an entire talk on its own. Really what we can do, how we can support people who are going through an emotionally difficult time. How do you express all of this? You know, what can be done to support people? There are many, many things. And I think that each school will be, I mean, I'm very cognizant of the fact that we are privileged schools, but I feel like, again, I'm saying that in the same way. It's like when we talk about our feelings, and again, we have to apologize for our feelings. I work in a school where mainly come from a privileged environment. And so many of the day schools, the Jewish day schools, have counselors, have social workers, and have teachers that are available and that want to assist in these ways. So we are brainstorming ideas about how to help, we want the students to be reached out to, we want the parents to know that we're available to assist. There were so many questions that were coming in about, I'm having a difficult time with my son, for example. He's moody, he's in the room, he doesn't want to come out of his room, he wants to play on his, you know, on his games. And honestly, I don't have time. We need a full session to talk about all those kind of things. But there are ways, there really are, and there are people out there who really want to help. So I don't even know where to start to answer you on that.
Meryl, don't worry. We are doing webinars all the time. So you've given us plenty of material to come and follow up on. So
absolutely, because there's just so many things. Just to say that one of the things in terms of resilience is, you know, is to get people expressing how they feel, and there's so many methodologies to do that. and to get people talking about how they're feeling in so many modalities. And I think that that's where I would say that we need to be going, getting people to express it, to write about it, to draw about it, to think about it, to talk about it, tell stories about it, and through whatever methodology works, and to get groups together. So parents who are experiencing the same difficulties, to form groups online and talk about it in the same way that they would have done in the real world. So I think that there's so much to talk about there. Honestly, I'll take up the rest, and you'll interrupt me again. I don't know if there's any specific questions people want to ask about it.
Great, great.
I don't know, Nikki most probably feels the same way.
Great, thank you, Meryl. Prof, you've been very generous with your time. I'm certainly happy if you want to leave us, but if you do have any concluding remarks for us, any thoughts listening to the conversation, we'd really welcome it from you.
So let me make 4 quick points. The first is that in this phased return we're going to have both at the schools and the university levels, we must anticipate that somebody is going to get infected. And you're going to have quarantine facilities available. You need a plan about quarantine if somebody gets ill. So it's the one thing that I would say is we're thinking about it. We have to have some things. One of the residences, for instance, will keep aside for quarantine facilities, etc. But I think the schools have to have a plan that if something happens, then they've got a plan on what to do if somebody gets infected. So that's the first thing. The second is I heard a number of principals speak about PPEs, the kind of protective equipment. WITS at the moment is manufacturing this, by the way. Our mechanical engineering is setting up things like masks, ventilators, screens, disinfectants. And so if there is a need, simply approach. I'm sure we could assist in any way. We may not be able to do all of it, but we're providing all of the hospitals with masks and disinfectants and screens. We can do that for the schools. We're just sending a whole series to Durban, to public hospitals in Durban. So if people need and they're looking for mechanisms, we'd be happy to facilitate that. The third is the one danger we got to watch out for in this new blended world we're going into, is that we don't result in a more unequal world. So some people get access to blended learning and the poor don't, because that will simply deepen inequality divides and it will make our place a much more difficult place to live in. So we've got to think about how we do it in a way that bridges the inequality divides. And then finally on fees, because I know a number of people have asked this, let me say this. It costs us about 400 million a month to keep WITS open. And we will probably 70%, 75% of that cost is labor. It's the academics. And that's not going to change in an online format. So I think, yes, there'll be certain differences, but do not anticipate significant shifts in cost structure at the university level, simply because 75% of the learning process is about skills. It's about paying academics. It's about paying professors. And that's not going to change whether you're in a blended format or not. And I just put that out there because it's something that I think we need to confront.
Prof, thank you very much. And we appreciate your time. And if you have to drop off while we wrap up, please feel free to. You're a busy man. Maybe Alison, just to move on to some concluding remarks and an issue of inclusivity and difference, and your thoughts on how we manage that in this blended learning world.
So some of your audience might not be aware of my context. I lead a small school, but it's a remedial school where we've got such diversity in the pupil enrollment in terms of their abilities and disabilities. And through all of this, I think a burning question for me is, are we keeping those children who may be even in mainstream schools on some measure of support program in mind as we seek our solutions? if you're a child who fundamentally has a barrier to reading, piles of content and directions and schedules and logins to remember and to navigate could be well out of their independent capacity. How are the children who experience neurological difficulty managing with this new platform? How are we going to reach and hold the children in mind? At Bella Vista, we've certainly seen that there are some children who, with this, they've just gone hop, skip, and jump over their disability. This has been a huge enabler. For example, if you have social anxiety, if you have high interest, if you prefer to, navigate your learning in your own time with your own inputs. But for many children, it's really overwhelming. And for their parents, it's particularly difficult to be looking at their child and trying to work with them and confronting the raw nature of the learning disability and what's so hard. It's one thing to know a label or to understand a difficulty. It's another to actually work with that child where 7 hours they're trying to struggle through something. So as everybody seeks solutions, my request is that we consider those children. I do believe we can make adaptations, and we haven't spent much time on the early child, but there's a lot that we can do. And as we look at the others, are there ways to consider that would help all children with access to materials? Have you switched on the read-write facility, text-to-speech, as a basic standard facility across all of your materials in classrooms? Are we checking in on how attention and focus is doing? Are we looking at the pressures that a disability or difficulty can bring into the home and offering some additional support for those families in particular? So my plea to schools and educators is, let's take best practice out of this. As we build our schools, let's keep these things that help our children with barriers. But while we're in the crisis, let's consider the right of access to learning for every child. Economic certainly, but within the spectrum of learning disabilities, there's a lot we can do. At Bella Vista Share, we're really happy to support teachers, particularly in that area. We have some things going for SENCOs, teachers that are coordinating special needs facilities in their schools, also for LSEN heads to talk about the issues which are unique and different, not only for each of us, our remedial schools, but in fact for every single one of the children within the school environment there too. So I'm putting one out for the many children who are actually pushing us for even a little bit more attention as we take the crisis through, and just not to leave them behind, to check that they can read, to check they've gained access, and to use the power of technology to support us to do that. We can differentiate extraordinarily on this platform.
Alison, thank you. That's a critical and very important point. Just some concluding brief thoughts, Nikki, from you. When we do appear in person to listen to you again, what are you going to tell us as parents?
Thanks, Sean. Well, whether or not we should or shouldn't be quarantined, in lockdown, there's so much debate around that. The one thing is for sure, things are not going back to normal. And the reality is that on the work front, many parents will never, ever go back to the office again full time. And this is the message coming from top executives who are saying we can probably exist on 2 days in the office a week. 3 days a week, we can all work from home. I think we're going to start seeing head offices becoming smaller. And this has been a prediction for many, many years. So we are going to see parents working from home, either on a full-time or a part-time basis, who used to be office-based. And that is going to change everything. It's going to impact on education. It's going to have a knock-on effect. But I think the hope for me is that necessity is the mother of invention. We're all discovering just how teachable we really are. And we really have to look through and sift through the collateral damage and find the collateral beauty, because it is always there. There are always sparks in the ashes. There are always things we can learn. And it's about how we frame this kind of adventure moving forward. So for me, I think our hope lies in strong partnerships between parents and schools, parents and teachers, schools and their teachers, and of course, business and education. It's partnerships all the way. I think that we're going to start understanding what that word collaboration actually really means over this time.
Nikki, thank you. That's a great point. And speaking of partnerships, we're very grateful for Richard for sponsoring tonight's event. And maybe Richard, just to wrap up, just let us know what you've learned from tonight and how we can take advantage of your platform in the future.
Thank you, Sean. I think with such an enormous focus on our kids and their education, we shouldn't also forget about the education of the parents, who are predominantly probably still working, still having to perform in their daily roles, and will need new skills by doing that remotely. So yeah, I'm very excited about the online learning platform and offering that we have, with courses like emotional intelligence and communication skills and managing remote teams, to help you step into a new world and to be able to run your job or your business with the modern skills that I like to call the COVID-19 opportunity, not the pandemic, and to really use this as a time to be able to step up.
Richard, thank you. I know we've had plenty of questions, and I apologize for not getting to all of them, but we've covered a huge amount of ground. And I think what I've learned is not only how inspiring the work that all of you are doing, but there's a lot more for us to talk about, and hopefully we can get everyone together around this virtual room again soon. So from my perspective, thank you all of you for being so generous with your time and for giving us such remarkable insights. And it really has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to everyone for your questions. And I apologize for what we haven't answered, but it's given us food for thought for follow-up webinars. Thank you very much. Howie?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for giving so generously of your time. It's absolutely amazing. My phone has been inundated of people saying to me, why haven't we gotten to their questions? But we've probably got close to 100 questions tonight, and Sean has tried to put them into various themes to answer, but there are lots of specifics out there. And unfortunately, we just couldn't get to them all, but we will share them with the panelists as well. And I think the panelists have a means of communicating with us and with our audience to be able to answer some of those questions. But I think the important ones and the basic ones about when are we going back to school? What does school look like in the future? What should we prepare for as we go back are the important themes that we've picked up tonight, and we've really answered. So I want to thank everyone for participating, and I want to give the Jewish Report one last punt, because this is our 18th webinar. Dan and I can't tell you what's coming up, but we have two unbelievable, spectacular things in the works that I think will blow people's socks away. So keep on tuning in. We'll be in touch with you. We'll be communicating with you. And we'd love to see you show your support for the Jewish Report. So we're going to end once again with the Jewish Report advert. Please give generously and allow us to help us continue to put these panels together and to continue publishing the Jewish Report newspaper.
Hi, I'm Howard Sackstein, Chairman of the South African Jewish Report. And we at the Jewish Report believe that Jewish organizations would be made or broken by how they serve their community during this impossibly difficult time. Our first decision was to continue to publish and to deliver newspapers not just to shops, but to people's townhouses and apartment blocks as well. Because feeling part of a community is one of the greatest services we could ever deliver to the Jews of South Africa. Our second decision was to create a platform for information, education and entertainment for the entire Jewish community and for South Africa as a whole. Over the past few weeks, we have created Zoom panels that have attracted tens of thousands of viewers. Some of the best healthcare specialists in South Africa gave practical advice on how to stay safe during Corona. Psychologists taught people how to stay sane, and wellness experts made sure that our minds and bodies were kept fit and healthy. One of the things we are most proud of is how we have highlighted the work done by so many Jews and Jewish organizations in feeding the needy and producing masks for both our own community as well as the townships. But now we at the Jewish Report face our own challenges to survive as advertising dries up. And so we are appealing to you. If you are one of our 55,000 readers, or if you are amongst the tens of thousands of people who have enjoyed our Zoom panels, now we at the Jewish Report are asking for your support. Please give generously to us so we can continue to publish and continue to serve you in this remarkable fashion.
Cool, fantastic, everyone. Have a good night, and we'll see you all on the next panel. Thank you all so much.
Good night. Thank you.